but let's get started. So my name's Logan Larson. I am the PrintEXPO moderator for this session. Also tech help, so I'm slowly letting people into the room and muting people as you come in. I'm going to be playing some videos from Dennis, and then we'll have a Q&A after, like I said. Dennis, do you want to do any introduction, or how do you feel?
Oh, hi, everybody. I think we could just play the videos.
Okay. Let's see.
Hello, my name is Dennis McNett, and I'm going to show you how to make a wolf mask out of cardboard and paper mache today. Okay, so the first step is going to be making a solid cylinder that fits your head, and this is going to be the base of the mask. If you look at this underneath all this stuff, it's just a really simple cylinder there. So first you look at the cardboard and find which way the corrugation runs. Cut your piece of cardboard the length perpendicular to that. You can break it like this. And I usually just use the back of a Sharpie pen. And what that does is it's gonna make the cardboard malleable. It's gonna make it bend easier and a little more fluid, make it not look as boxy. Once you break, the corrugation rolls up and it bends and it moves very easily. From here, I'll wrap it around my head, mark where it overlaps, and cut it. Then get you some 2-inch masking tape, and I always recommend the better stuff, not the cheap stuff, because it doesn't stick very well. And you're going to tape that seam and create the outer part of the cylinder. I always tape that seam really good because this is the base. This is what you're going to stick everything onto. You're going to stick the snout on here. You're going to cut the eyes out. You're going to put ears on. Before I add a top to the cylinder, I like to add a little dimension. Like I like the front of the wolf mask to slope down just a little bit. So I'll usually mark maybe an inch or so and just kind of cut that angle and know that the short end is going to be the front. So everything's going to slope forward. And then I'm going to take that cylinder base and trace it out. And then you're going to cut that out and attach it to the top. Once you tape this on really good, then you have that solid structure to add whatever you want to it. And that cylinder doesn't just have to fit your head. I'm showing you how to make a wolf mask. Maybe it needs to be a lot bigger than this. Maybe you're making a frost giant that lives in an ice castle on a frozen lake that you have to conjure.
It's for almost everybody.
So I'll take the cylinder and put it on my head and kind of take my fingers and put them intuitively where my eyeballs are. And then hold those two spots, make a little mark so I know my eyeballs kind of fall right there, and draw out some wolf eyes. And once you got those drawn, you want to cut these out. Now you have the start of your mask, the base. So next step on this is to make the wolf snout. You got the cardboard, broke the corrugation, so now it bends. So I'm probably going to cut it like this, and then I have the shape of the snout. So the next thing is putting the cap on the end of the nose. Just kind of hold that on there where I want it to land and mark it. And then I'll cut that piece out. Something that's really awesome about these is that it's very forgiving. If something doesn't line up, you can trim it down with a blade. If it doesn't fit right, you could bend it. So there's the snout that I just added. The next thing I will make on this is the 2 ears. Super easy, just flip it over and trace it the opposite direction. Cut that out and you got 2 ears. If you want to toughen anything up, you can just double up this cardboard. If I were to cut another ear with the corrugation going the opposite direction, it just makes it that much stronger. There you go. Ears are on there, snouts on there. You can do all kinds of extra stuff. See, I added some brows on here, thickened up the front part of the snout and added some teeth. And then you just want to cover everything with tape and smooth the tape down as much as you can. And that'll give you a smooth surface. The real fun part is decorating this. my name is Dennis McNett, and I'm going to show you how to make a wolf mask out of cardboard and paper mache today. Okay, the next step is to cover this with paper mache. What I like to use is acrylic gel medium because it's a little tougher and it dries really fast. So what I usually do is I'll mix with some water to about the consistency of ketchup, which we refer to around here as Wolfbat blood. And then it has some thin bond paper. It's the same thickness as the paper you would use on your computer printer. You can also use newsprint or thin paper so that it stays nice and malleable. So we're gonna take some of this Wolfbat blood and brush it onto the back. And the reason we put it onto the paper first is because it makes the paper expand and it makes it malleable. So when I go to put it on this mask, I want it to follow all the contours that we took the time to put on there and push out all the air bubbles flat to the surface of the mask. So as you can see, it starts to smooth the surface, makes it look a little more finished, and it absolutely makes it tougher. You can double up the paper, you could triple up the paper, and it'll just make it that much stronger. Another little trick is we're going around a corner. If you make little relief tears, you could brush that piece of paper on, and then you got these nice little flaps to make the transition around that snout or into the eyeball, around the teeth, whatever you're doing. Okay, so I think I got this thing pretty well covered with a layer of paper and gel medium, and just set this out in the sun and let it dry. You could also put it in front of a fan, and this will probably dry in 30-45 minutes, and I'll talk about decorating this thing, putting whatever kind of embellishment you want on it. Okay, so this thing's pretty dry. So now I'm gonna start by painting this a base color, a solid red. I'll probably paint his snout black and his teeth white, and then make a decision from there what kind of patterns and imagery I want to put on there. I'll recommend that you use some acrylic paint. You can use house paint. If you have some artist paint, you can use that. Okay, this thing's all painted, and now I'm gonna continue decorating it with some prints. So I'm gonna get busy and I'm gonna attach these prints the same way that you would the paper mache. You're gonna use some Wolfbat blood, which is acrylic gel medium, and I'll wrap them with linoleum cut prints or wood cut prints, and sometimes I silk screen them. And I'll use different patterns that I'll carve into the block. I'll use snake hearts or feathers to break up space, and at the bottom I'll add cloth. You can get different looks with these things. I've done them very minimal, where I'll paint them just a solid color and add a couple of little elements, or I'll go completely nuts, which is typically what I end up doing. And I'm including a PDF of some of this stuff that you could download and print it out on your computer and cut them out and paste them on your mask. So I'm going to add some feathers and some snakes and some eyeballs and some patterns, and use whatever you find around the house. You could stencil this thing with spray paint. You could attach wrapping paper or any kind of thin paper. Okay, this thing's all finished up. Prints are on there, and I added some acrylic paint to tighten things up, added some dots to kind of break up the space, and I'd say that's a finished wolf mask. The only other thing I'd probably do is add some polyurethane or some resin later. I wanted to give you a couple other ideas. You can always create a robe, and I just use like a liquid stitch kind of glue, like a fabric glue. This one, all that red and black on here, that's all a spray paint stencil. And then added some more fabric and images on there. Now you're a whole different character. These are just hands I made out of cardboard, just like you did the mask, and then paper mache'd them, painted them. So if you're doing a bird, you can have a robe and then like your wings come out. Take care of yourself, and hope you're well, hope your family's well. We're gonna get through this. All right, take care.
Just one more.
Hello, my name is Dennis McNett, and today I'm going to show you how to make a relief print. Okay, the materials that you're going to need are some basic battleship gray linoleum. You're going to need something to draw with. If you don't want to draw with a marker, you could get some waterproof ink and a brush. You're going to need a carving tool. I like to use these V-notch chisels. A blade, some relief printmaking ink. And you're gonna need an ink brayer, and eventually we're gonna need some paper, and we'll go over that a little later. I'm just gonna talk about some of the basics in relief printmaking. Everything that you carve away is going to be white, and everything that's left on the surface to take ink is going to be black. So you have to consider that while you're carving. Something else is when you print, you get a mirror image. So just remember, you're going to have to reverse it. We're just doing a basic black and white print. So consider drawing out large areas of black, medium grays, and then bright whites. The drawing on the block is very basic. It's more of a reference to where I'll be carving. And I don't draw out all these little lines. I do a lot of the drawing with the chisel. That's one of the really cool things about relief prints is they're bold and graphic. And I like to use a marker or something about that width. You don't want to use like a little fine tip because this medium doesn't translate well with little thin outlines. Some basics on carving. Rule number 1, don't carve like this because you're going to go right into your hand. Hold the chisel like this. I got a good grip. It's sitting in the palm of my hand here, and you got pretty good control if you do that. And the amount of pressure will dictate how wide that line is. So if I go very light, you get a very thin line. If I dig down into that tool, it can be wider. If you're going around a curve, contour lines can help to define and give it volume. They also give it texture and create like a gray. You can do different textures, like if you pick at the surface. If you need a nice, sharp, clean line, cut it with a blade first, and then if you cut up to that line, it'll pop off. This one's kind of fun if you just kind of wiggle the tool, get that weird kind of zigzag texture. So let's get started. The way I got into doing relief prints was I took a class in a community college, and the guy pulled a print off the press, and when he did that, it mimicked everything I was into, all the punk rock show flyers, all the skateboard graphics of the early 80s. Carving can be a little bit hypnotic. Okay, now that the block is all carved, it's time to ink it up and print it. There's 2 different kinds of ink you can get, and one of them is oil-based, which is what I typically use. The other is water-soluble ink that cleans up with soap and water, and putting it onto a palette that I can roll out on. You can use a scrap piece of wood or a piece of tile or glass. And then I'm gonna take some of this ink and roll it out with the brayer. Hear that noise? That's what you want. You don't want it sounding like wet Velcro or kind of to look like velvet when you're rolling it out. And then you're gonna take this over to the block and roll it onto the surface. And you just want to look everything over, make sure you got everything covered in ink. And then I usually hit it in a couple different directions across the entire surface to even the ink out. And we're going to be printing by hand. So what I've done here is a little registration system for the block and the paper. You could use like a thin newsprint or a thin Japanese paper. What you want to do is lay your paper down on that registration. And I usually gently go over the back of the paper with my hand just to get it to stick to the ink. You can use a couple different things to print with. Sometimes I'll use the back of the can to give it a once over. The other thing you can use is a wooden spoon and go over every single square inch and give it good pressure. Not too much to go through the paper, but enough to transfer the ink. You're gonna have to take your time, give it good even pressure. Try not let the paper bunch up or move. The really great thing about prints is that you can make multiples of your work. So if this one doesn't print the way you want it, just print another one. Ink it up and do it again. So there you have our first print. It's all temporary. Something that's always fun to do is to ink it up heavier than you normally would for paper and print it on a t-shirt. Do that at home. Lay a piece of wood down, a towel down, lay your shirt down with a piece of paper inside so the ink doesn't bleed through, and drive over it. And the pressure will transfer the ink onto the t-shirt. If you print black on a black t-shirt and then spray bleach onto it, you'll get a really cool looking effect. All right, that concludes making a relief print. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you're staying safe. Take care.
Wow, I didn't know about that part of printing on t-shirts, of bleaching it to make it lighter. Didn't know that. So now we'll open it up to questions. If you have a question, feel free to either turn off your video or just turn off your mute and say it out loud, or send it in the chat and I can pose it directly to Dennis. I can start one off. I can start one off if you want. So how did that whole situation come about? Have you been making this kind of work, these masks, for a long time, or is this a recent development in your practice?
I think it's very. I've used print on three-dimensional objects for a long time, but I think using the map and performances really started around 2005, and that was Jeffrey Deitch from Deitch Project had a art parade that would go down West Broadway in New York, and he put out an open call. He had to submit a proposal, and so I wrote up this whole thing, and then it got accepted, so then I had to make them. So, and I got such a rush from that project that I was like, man, I got to do some more of this stuff. Related over the years.
Yeah. We have a question from Cassie. How is performance an important component of your work?
Hey, Cassie. Hey, Ryan. I'm just going to say real quick, Ryan O'Malley edited these videos, and they would be total garbage if he didn't, because he edited out all my ums and uhs. Thanks, Ryan. But let's see, how is performance important to your work? Well, I think once I started to do performances and parades and stuff like that, the magical thing that started to happen was I was able to include so many people, because I could show people how to make masks. They can make their own. All of a sudden, they're part of the Wolfbat tribe, and they're participating in whatever is going on. So they were able to participate in parades, ceremonies, all kinds of performances, and that to me has a lot more energy than just, or it just has a different energy than hanging something up in the house. It's like a totally different experience.
Definitely. We have a question. Are you comfortable if we share the video links?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. I can drop those in the chat. So those are relatively large. Some of those surfaces are relatively large. How do you go about printing some of those? Or are they kind of more collaged like some of the masks are, some of those patterns?
Yeah, I definitely piece most of that stuff together. So if I'm traveling somewhere, I'll usually have two big suitcases that are completely filled with print material. So it's just collage material. Usually I can take those suitcases, and two suitcases will cover a couple like huge areas. Like if I'm doing one of those big Viking ships or something like that, I mean, it wouldn't even take a quarter of a suitcase to cover one of them. So I can, because I can fit so much in there, I can also have tons of different patterns and different images to pull from. So if I want you to make even a landscape on a mural or something, I can use that as drawing material for whatever.
Yeah. Do you have a dream project for your work, or for your performance work at least?
I have to say I've been really fortunate in doing stuff, working with different bands. you know, I fantasize about different things. Like I've done these hollow Wolfbat events, and for the longest time, I wanted to do something with the band VR, and I was able to do a collaboration with them. And after doing a couple more, I was like, what other bands would be super fun? And I was like, man, what if you could do something with Outcast or something like that? That would just be like bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know. There's tons of stuff. I enjoy doing the small things and the larger things, and everything in between.
Definitely. We have a question from Jasmine. Her nephew was wondering what all the animals you've created with your mask.
Okay. Wolves, absolutely. You know, I'm pretty obsessed with wolves, as you might guess. I think some of my favorite ones I made recently were these vultures. I think you saw like a little clip of those. I've done hawks, eagles, ravens,
Mm-hmm.
wolfbat. I've done giant sea serpent.
Wow.
That's pretty close to it.
Yeah. Do you usually make costumes, like full kind of everything else too, or?
Yeah. I've tried to do projects just making masks, and it just doesn't have the same feel as, you know, somebody walking around with a big skull head and
Mm-hmm.
then a t-shirt doesn't have the same effect as someone with like a, you know, a printed robe with patterns and kind of matches the mask.
Yeah.
It's
So
definitely-
to date, like what has been the most difficult animal to create?
those vultures were no joke. Like because they,
Yeah.
their head set way above your head. So I had to
Mhm.
come up with a structure that kind of, you can look out the neck, but then it also supports the weight of the top so it needs to bend forward. So I had to run these sticks up the spine and then belt around your waist to give it more support. And the wings got kind of tricky
Yeah.
as well, because they're 8 foot on each side, almost 6 foot on each side. 12-foot wingspan.
Yeah. We have a question about what kind of cardboard you like to use. Is there any specific type, or is it just kind of?
You can, I mean, to do these masks, I would stick with like single wall corrugated cardboard.
Mhm.
I've used recycled stuff too, totally fine. Just want to get boxes. Sometimes it's nice to have the big sheets because you can kind of draw everything out, just cut everything. But yeah.
We have a question from Brock in the chat. Do you have a favorite printmaking paper you would like to use for hand printing? And how can we get involved next time you're creating a big parade show?
As far as like my favorite, I don't really have a favorite printmaking paper. Cheap is my favorite. So if I can get some affordable paper that's, you know, not total garbage, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And then as far as participating in like a big parade, I'll usually, if I'm starting one, I'll usually start doing some posts about it on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll ask for volunteers.
Yeah. John Hancock wants to know, have you considered more satanic imagery in your work?
Sure. I mean, I have devils, I have bulls, I have, what else do you want? I could make a John Hancock mask. That would be pretty satanic.
A good collaboration. I think that would be fun. and see if any other questions come in. I guess one question I have is, how do you play with the how the person inside is seen? Is it usually through the mouth that you're seeing out, or is it through eyes, or what's kind of the mask
It,
setup?
it depends. Like, like something like this, you're looking right out the eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this on, you're just looking straightforward. Right? Oh, you're looking out the eyes, but you're also looking out the nose because it's this one's kind of heavy too. This side, you're looking out the back right here at the bottom. You can't really see. Yeah, it just depends on how big and what how it's being used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a question from Jennifer Watkins. What was it like to work with Vans and other corporate companies and incorporate your prints into products? Explain the process. Did you enjoy that, or do you like making your own work more?
One thing that I've been really fortunate with is when I do work with a company, no one's ever asked me to do anything that I wouldn't normally do. They usually say, "Hey, we like what you're doing. Do it on a T-shirt or something like that." I haven't really done a whole lot of. I do T-shirt graphics still sometimes, and I definitely do skateboard graphics still. But with Vans, I did do some shoes. It was really weird. Like I've never set out to be a shoe designer or anything like that. So, but it was kind of like making a mask. It's like you have a 3D object. And, okay, what would look okay on the side of this?
Yeah.
And they've always been super supportive of the art, and that Vans in particular. So I've always had a good working relationship with them. Yeah, I guess that kind of answers that. So do you enjoy making?
Yeah. What was it like did you see any of your shoes around, or have you seen any of it in public?
Yeah, I've had a couple, not a lot, because there's, it's a big world, but I have gotten on the subway in New York and saw a kid with like a skateboard I designed. Was like 13 years old, and I was like, oh, yes, just super psyched on that. And I've seen people wearing it.
Definitely. Well, we can see if anyone else has any more questions, but we can maybe wrap it up. Wait a second more. I'll send this info in the chat. So we have another session in this coming up at 3:30, and it can be accessed the same place that you came here from. So printexpo.org. PrintAustin relies on the generosity of individual donors to provide opportunities like this. So there's a donate button to PayPal, and you can follow all the artists and learn more about their work along with many others in their PrintAustin profile, which is also in the link. One last question. We have a question from Jennifer Watkins saying, what moved you from 2D to 3D and why?
I totally enjoy making prints, like I especially release prints. I enjoy that carved mark, and you really just can't get that energy any other way. Yeah. And I'm not going to say I got bored with printmaking, but I know how to build things, and I know how to create 3D objects, and I just don't want to pigeonhole myself into just doing one medium. So they just kind of merged. I took my favorite thing from printmaking and I added it to 3D pieces, maps, murals, all kinds of stuff.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dennis. Do you have anything else you want to add, or?
Just hey, I appreciate all y'all checking us out. Hope you're all doing well, and hope we can see each other in person sooner than later.
Definitely.
Hope all your families are well, and sending you guys a bunch of love. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.